let's have a look at some of the suggestions that folks made from the audience. So a lot of people made a ton of suggestions, and they were all really interesting to read. Some of them would work as a trait for me to add right now, and some of them wouldn't. So let's actually start by talking through some of the neat ideas that people suggested that actually wouldn't work right now for various reasons. So first off, Altered Beast 420 made a lot of suggestions for traits that would add entirely new mechanics to the game. Things like having a lone wolf mode that's attached to a trait on a particular character, or saying that a character is homeless, and that means that they can claim any site as a base rather than relying on an official home site. Or there was one that he called Hands Solo, which was somebody who can fight without weapons. They can just fight with their fists. And all of those traits, they sound like neat ideas for ways to vary characters or vary situations, vary game modes, basically. But each of them is so large and all-encompassing, there's no way that I could actually add it as a trait. As you can see, this is what a trait is. A trait is a list of choices, like the ones that you see here. And none of these give me the power to add entire mechanics to the game. That would be a completely different process that I could not possibly go through on this stream. So, I think I take all of those under advisement as suggestions of things that Altered Beast would love to see in the game, but I couldn't possibly add them as traits, not on my own. Similarly, Redline is a suggestion by Furion, who suggested that this would be a character for whom the higher up the infection meter you go, the more melee damage you do. So basically, the sicker you get, the more powerful you get, which encourages people to sort of ride the edge. And that's a great idea for a trait. That sounds like that could be really, really cool, except that would require me to pull in a programmer to create that, basically a brand new buff that varies those two things together. Basically, as this one stat goes up, another stat goes up. That's not a thing that I can just do in the traits editor. Now, if we had approached traits in a different way and had set them up so that each of them is basically individually programmed, or even individually scripted using something like Blueprint within Unreal, something like that could easily be possible. If we had approached it that way, they could absolutely have given me the power to create relationships between two different stats like that. But we decided instead to go with an approach to this where making a trait was very simple and quick and easy so that I could make 1,350 of them, and I would not need to actually, with each one of them, go through all of the effort and the headaches involved in programming or scripting them to work a certain way. Instead, we treated traits like data. We don't do any logic inside of the trait. We only fill it out with data that is then read by logic that is prefabbed to work with every possible trait. So an idea like that is a really good one, but the way that we, in order for us to have 1,350 of them, we had to kind of hamstring the system in a certain way to make it so that every trait was very simple. Let's see here. So similarly, I Am Roofstone suggested we could do some relationship traits. It said, I am the brother of so-and-so, or I am the wife of so-and-so. And that's actually an idea. We actually did mess with that idea a little bit. It ended up not going fully into the game because we couldn't take it. We ran out of time. We didn't have time to make that work all the way. But we would have had to treat that as a special case set of traits. It would be its own category of traits that would be managed in a totally different way, because making those connections between different characters and pulling the name of a different character into the name of a trait, that's something that I can't do with the current system as it stands. So it's a really good idea. It's so good, I also had the same idea 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But and so that's the definition of a good idea, is if I had it. But in any case, but that's something we couldn't do right now with the tool as it stands. So Vincent Gargillo suggested that we could have an OCD trait that involves a character always shutting the door behind them. And so having characters shut the door behind them, that would be probably pretty cool. I think a lot of people kind of think it's funny that characters just leave doors open and then the doors close themselves on their own at some point in time. It doesn't feel quite as realistic, but that's something I couldn't do as a trait. That's a character behavior. But also, I wanted to highlight the fact that we deliberately did not actually include the diagnosable names of any mental illnesses or conditions in our traits, because it's so easy to misrepresent those. We toyed with the idea. In fact, if you look in some of the names of our traits, and I forgot where these live, it might be under minor, it might be under stats, but we actually do have a trait that was called OCD under the surface. I don't remember where it was. I'm going to find it. I'm going to use my little finder here. There it is. So we actually do have one who its name was OCD, because we were toying with the idea of what would it be like to try to represent these sort of psychological conditions and things like that in the game. But after talking to a lot of people, we basically ended up deciding that we didn't want to try to represent these things by name, because it's so easy to feel like you're not really doing a good job of representing them. And people who have been diagnosed with these conditions would feel like this game is saying that it's representing me, but it's doing a garbage job, because each of these traits, they've got such limited power. We can only do so much with them, right? And so instead, we sort of explained, we sort of took similar ideas and we explained them as anxious all the time, which is just it's a description of how a person is. It's not a diagnosis, and it's not saying you're a particular kind of person who has a particular kind of situation. It's just saying, observably, this character seems to their friends to be anxious all the time. And that's different from giving the character a diagnosis. And so we consciously did that. Like, we avoided using the names of diagnoses for people, but still the personality traits you observe in other people, those do seem like the kinds of things we'd want to represent. So partly, Vincent Gargillo, I didn't put this in here because it was already kind of there. It was just there in a little bit more of a subtle way. And so, yeah, we've gone through a few of these. One last one that I wanted to highlight was La Coalición this morning. He missed the cutoff to make suggestions here, but he started throwing some ideas around. And one idea that he threw around was called had 3.5 dogs, suggesting that someone takes in dogs who maybe have disabilities and things like that. I felt like there's a lot of ways you could read 3.5 dogs. It felt a little bit weird. But one thing that actually I just kind of wanted to highlight, let's take anxious all the time and replace its name briefly, and we'll undo this in just a second. But if I actually type, if I type 3.5 dogs with numerals, say had 3.5 dogs with numerals, that kind of works, right? You can kind of make that work, except we've got kind of a style guide. We don't actually put numerals in the names of traits because it just looks kind of cheap. And so what I would have to do is type had 3.5 dogs, which turns red because that exceeds our character limit. And, as, a leader of one of our communities in Mexico, I think that La Coalición understands the importance of not only making character limits work, but making them work in other languages. One of the reasons why we have such a strict character limit is not because we need to make it work in English, but because we need to make it work in every language, including German, which tends to have some very, very long words. So I'm going to undo that. We're going to leave anxious all the time untouched, not break it. But that's some of the stuff we have to think about. Is not only what should the name of the description be, but how short can I make it? And can I fit it into our character limits? All right, so I'm going to move on to adding some actual traits that are suggestions from the audience. But Brant, is there anything you've been waiting to hand off to me while I've been just talking a blue streak?
I think the important one, I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff rolling in, much of it related to flatulence, but I think a really important one was somebody with IBS who only takes half damage from bloater gas.
Because they're so accustomed to their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right.
No, but I just want to. I'm seeing all of your suggestions, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to most of them because what Geoffrey is presenting takes a lot of time for him to make sure that it all gets out there. So.
Yeah, honestly,
sorry, I'm not ignoring everyone.
I've been a little bit too thorough, and I'm worried I'm going to run out of time now. So let's get quickly to the actual making of the traits. So there were a few other suggestions that we already had, including like former bodybuilder. We already had that. Shaky hands, already had that. Artyom the Guardian, Daryl solves problems. Pack mule. That's actually we avoided naming traits after animals, just because comparing a person to an animal can sometimes be a mean thing people do, and we just didn't want to represent that in our communities. And so we had another one called Does Heavy Lifting that is actually under the surface called Pack Mule. And Hibachi Cook, Anton Nunez, we already had. But a few that we didn't. Daryl Solves Problems suggested the idea of a trait called childlike, and he suggested that that basically this is a character who makes fart jokes all the time, and they have great morale because they're having an awesome time, but everyone else finds them annoying. And I thought that's kind of that's the sort of thing that we do actually like to depict in the game. So let's find morale. I think morale is, here we go, morale. Okay, so let's find morale attributes. Let's just copy and paste one of these. So we've got kleptomaniac here. in order to save ourselves a little bit of time, let's just copy and paste kleptomaniac. And then let's change everything about it. So instead of childlike, let's call it childish. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because we've got sort of a stylistic thing we do here where the name of a trait is how other people see the character. But then the description of the trait is how the character explains themselves. And so we should probably say, because the name of the trait is how other people view them, let's use the more pejorative term, childish, because this is everyone looking down on this person for being weird. But then let's still give them a description along the lines of what Daryl was suggesting, which is something like, fart jokes are even funnier the 12th time you make them. So this is the character boldly defending their position, and saying how this works. As far as their hero bonus, let's see. So it's somebody who's like maybe funny and entertaining, maybe annoying. They've got a positive outlook. They love them, just absolutely love what they're doing. Storytelling, silence policy, frequent check-ins. I don't know if any of these is particularly appropriate here. Actually, you know what? Helpful mockery. Stamina, helpful mockery. So this gives everybody additional stamina because they're constantly being verbally abused by someone. So we'll do that. Let's call it, okay, this is an attribute. It is morale. We could have it affect the character's standing, actually. Let's not make that be a thing. Not make that be a thing. We've got a hero bonus. They are annoying. They don't have to be conflict prone, though. And this is an objectionable trait to have in a brand new character at the very beginning of the game. So, so let's say they cause, so this is the character buff. Okay, so what this is saying, the kleptomania trait gives everyone in the community a -7 to morale. That's not what we want to do with this character. We want this character to be entertaining themselves. So we're going to look at all our list of morale buffs here. We'll try to find a positive one. There we go. Morale bonus small. Let's say +5 morale just to this character entertaining themselves, and it applies to themselves only. But then let's also give them a negative, which would be, aside from this, which makes them involved in conflicts. But let's say that their standing will go down. So let's look for standing. Standing rate reduce medium. So -33% standing rewards, which means that they don't progress in the community as quickly because people think that they're weird and annoying. These nicknames don't make any sense. We can come up with some new ones, though. We could just call them Kid, for instance. That might be a little bit weird. I don't know. We'll think about that. We'll get rid of these nicknames. If anybody thinks of a really good idea for a nickname for a childish person, I mean, honestly, we could just call them Fart. That would be fine, right? Little weight of 5 there. And then community buffs. We don't need any skills. We don't need to give this character any skills. They're fine. So now we've got a childish trait. So thank you, Daryl Solves Problems, for suggesting that. But this one didn't do any skills. Let's actually grab one that actually might suggest some skills. So Altered Beast 420 suggested we could do one called Played Hide and Seek. So let's go up to Wits, Stealth. Let's grab that Wallflower trait. Let's duplicate that. And let's make a trait that makes somebody sneaky. So let's call this one, this isn't an attribute, though. This is a before story. Or maybe it's a hobby. Let's call it a hobby. So hide, let's call it hide seek, whatever. And then let's say, now played hide and seek, almost everyone played hide and seek at some point. Let's just say that they loved hide and seek. So they're different from everyone else because hide and seek was really important to them as a character. Let's match this with a lot of the other ones. And then here, I don't know, what can we type here? Something like, what does Ollie oxen free even mean? Because what is that? Did people play this game to give their cattle a fighting chance to escape? Now that's not going to work. That's way too long. So how about I just say this? What does Ollie Oxenfree even mean? Quiet time might actually be an appropriate one for this one. Except, is there like some kind of like, I'm trying to remember, was there like intramural? Yeah, intramural sports. They organize games, and so they improve morale by organizing games. Okay, so this is not an attribute. This is a hobby. and characters can have multiple hobbies. I think this is not going to affect their standing. This affects their wits. It's badass enough. It doesn't have anything to do with conflict, and I don't remember what the test one was, so I'm just going to leave it there. And then let's say, okay, so what character buffs should this have? So Altered Beast suggested that this should directly affect their stealth, like how quiet they are, how far away they can be for a zombie to notice them. Those are not buffs that I have here. The only place where I've got buffs like that are way over here in the skills. So if I pop open the skills and I look at wit specialties and I go over here, and we're going to look at these a little bit later. If we look over here at stealth, we've actually got some stealth buffs here. Skill stealth passive 1, skill stealth passive 2. These are the buffs that as you're rising the skill in the stealth skill that make you harder and harder for zombies to detect. But we don't want to use those because those are specific to the stealth skill. They're all about the stealth skill. And so that would actually kind of interfere with the stealth skill if we started giving those buffs out to any other character who happened to have a random trait. So we're not going to do that. Instead, let's get rid of character buffs entirely and just make this about granting the character the stealth skill. So right here, we've got granting them the stealth skill, and let's make them even better at it than the Wallflower. They've really put time and effort into getting good at stealth. So let's give them 5 stars in stealth. So now if a character starts with the loved hide and seek trait, that means you can expect them to show up with the stealth skill at level 5. And we are already just running out of so much time, but traits are kind of the big one. We'll spend a little bit less time on the other stuff. So another suggestion that we got was from Matthew Taylor. He suggested we could do something called homesteader. And what he was hoping it was this is somebody who has already built their apocalypse base before. They've done it just as part of their normal life. They're all ready for the apocalypse, and they somehow missed out on living at their actual base, but they've done it before. They know how to manage sort of the logistics of building a base, and so they would give, for instance, an increase to all of your or a decrease to all of your costs, or an increase to all of your incomes. The problem is I don't actually have that buff. I don't have the ability to mess with all of your incomes, and it might also be a little bit OP. We've got a few traits out here that are so OP that players just always want them, and if we gave you a trait that powerful, I'm worried that it would just become the meta, and it would take over a little bit. So I like the idea of Homesteader as a sort of a background, but let's have it do something slightly different. So I'm actually thinking of doing something a little bit weird with this. Let me find the right category for it. I guess it's probably stats. Let's make a new one completely from scratch. So let's call this one Homesteader. And, we need to give it the whole big, long, elaborate name. Let's call this Material Costs, because that's what we're going to be messing with, and call it Homesteader. And then we will, this is before story. This is a before story as well. This is so I'll do before to categorize it. Let's make this very rare because I think will still be kind of powerful. But let's go Homesteader, and then the description, something along the lines of, I spent my life building an apocalypse base, survival base. So, of course, the outbreak hit while I was on vacation. That's too long. What if we just say building a base? There we go. I spent my life building a base, so of course the outbreak hit while I was on vacation. Bonus, I think that high expectations might be appropriate for this. Let's put some tags on here. Let's say that this is a before story. It tells a story about what the person was doing before they got started, and I mean it's got a hero bonus. We'll slap hero on there, and maybe let's give them badass, because out here somebody who's done this before is probably pretty badass. And then what I was thinking we would do is give them a community buff, which is material. Was it called material costs? I'll look up the word cost. I think I found one that might be appropriate. Yeah, so basically one of our difficulty buffs that we use for like the green zone it reduces your materials costs for building stuff. So this is me co-opting a buff from another part of the game, and I'm going to have to talk with some folks about whether this is a good idea. We might not ship this one. But the idea is all of your materials costs when you're building things are just a little bit less because you've got this person in your community. So that's a little bit powerful. It might be OP. I'm going to need to talk with somebody about that. But I kind of wanted to show you the power that this system has. Like, even though there's certain things I can't do, I can't script entirely new behaviors into the game, I can co-opt things if I want to and take something we built for one part of the game and put it in another.
Geoffrey?
Yes.
If you don't call this person Salt and Prepper, I'm going to quit.
Okay. That's I don't know if I can type that in a way that'll look right. Salt and Prepper.
Preppa. Come on, let's get this correct here.
Okay, I'm not sure about that. I'll think about that. I'll think about that one.
It looks like I just quit my job. Nice knowing y'all.
Okay, so the last one, I think we're not going to get to the taco one today. The last one I kind of wanted to show you was people have been making, when we raised this question, people made a lot of comments about one of the favorite traits, which is basically the meta, which is Blood Plague Survivor. So let's look at Blood Plague Survivor, because one thing that somebody noticed, and they called this out on my personal stream, which was the only characters who can have Blood Plague Survivors are sheriffs and warlords. And that wasn't something I thought about or planned in advance, but when you look at it, absolutely. Daring. This is a tag that says only give this trait to sheriffs and warlords. They were like, why is that? And the way that I was thinking about it was, this is somebody who put themselves at risk a lot, got blood plague, and then just through sheer force of luck ended up not dying from it, and the disease ran its course and they never catch it again. And it sounds pretty cool. So I was like, oh yeah, this is a very daring person who put themselves out there. But I wasn't thinking about the fact that it limits it to half the population. So let's not do that anymore. So now twice as many characters are going to be able to get Blood Plague Survivor just because I deleted that one little trait, that one little tag. So there you go. That's some edits to the trait system, and that took me like 40 minutes. And I was expecting this to take like 25. So unfortunately, you get me talking about the trait system, and I just talk an awful lot. So let's talk about something else now.